Ah, the armadillo. You know, for a lot of us, it's just that weird little armored guy we might see scurrying across a road. But let me tell you, there is so much more to this animal than you probably think. In this explainer, we're going to see why it's way more complex and honestly way more important than you might imagine.
Okay, quick question for you. When someone says armadillo, what's the very first image that pops into your head?
Yeah, I bet for most of you it's that classic move, right? A predator shows up and poof, the armadillo just rolls into this perfect, impenetrable little sphere. It's their signature thing.
Well, here's the thing. That's actually one of the biggest myths about them. It's not quite true. Out of the 20-plus species of armadillo, only one, the three-banded armadillo, can actually pull off that trick. All the others, including the nine-banded one that's super common in the US, they just have too many bony plates to curl up completely. And that fact right there tells you there's a whole lot more going on under that shell than we give them credit for.
All right, so let's peel back that armor and take a look at what makes this animal a true biological marvel, because their quirks, they go way, way beyond just their shell.
Let's start with just a number. 4. Just 4. What in the world could that be about?
Well, that 4 has everything to do with their totally bizarre way of having babies. Get this, the nine-banded armadillo is the only mammal on Earth known to consistently give birth to 4 identical quadruplets. They all come from a single egg. It's like a natural cloning process that is completely unique in the entire animal kingdom. Insane, right?
Okay, you ready for another number? 6 minutes. What could an armadillo possibly do for 6 minutes straight? Any ideas?
That's how long they can hold their breath underwater. It's long enough to just walk across the bottom of a stream or a pond. This incredible scale is a huge reason they've been so good at spreading out into new territories. But believe it or not, that's not even their only trick for getting across the water.
I mean, their ingenuity is just incredible. If a river's too deep or too wide to just walk across, no problem. They switch gears. They start gulping air, not into their lungs, but straight into their intestines, basically turning themselves into a little armored raft so they can just paddle their way across. How cool is that?
And then their importance doesn't just stop with themselves. The giant armadillo, for example, is what scientists call an ecosystem engineer. With those huge claws, it digs these massive burrows that become life-saving shelters for more than 24 other species. We're talking ocelots, tortoises, even giant anteaters. They literally build real estate for the entire neighborhood.
Okay, so we've seen how amazing they are. But there's another side to the armadillo. And this is where things get complicated, especially when they move out of the wild and into our own backyards.
You see, that same incredible digging skill we just talked about, well, it becomes a massive headache for homeowners. As they search for bugs and grubs, they just tear up lawns, destroy flower beds, and can even mess with building foundations. Suddenly, this biological marvel becomes a major pest.
So what are you supposed to do about it? Well, according to wildlife experts, don't even bother trying to scare them off or using repellents. They say it's basically a waste of time. The only things that really work are physical barriers, like a fence that's dug deep into the ground, or trapping them. These guys they're determined. But the problem isn't just about ruined gardens. There's one last piece to this puzzle, and honestly, it's a hidden threat with really serious implications for our health. This all boils down to something called zoonotic transmission. It's a scientific term, but all it really means is when a disease jumps from an animal to a person. And it turns out armadillos are a surprisingly big player in this. This is going to sound crazy, but armadillos are one of the only other animals on the planet, besides us, that are a natural home for the bacteria that causes leprosy. Their body temperature is just naturally lower than most mammals, which, believe it or not, makes them the perfect incubator for this specific bacteria to thrive.
And don't think this is some rare one-off thing. A big study in the Brazilian Amazon found that a shocking 62%, that's more than half of the armadillos they studied, were infected with the leprosy bacteria.
And the risk for people is very real. The scientists behind that study put it bluntly, saying, and I'm quoting them here, people who hunt, kill, or process or eat armadillo meat are at a higher risk for infection with M. leprae from these animals.
And if you thought that was bad, wait. The danger doesn't even stop with leprosy. They are also a major carrier for the parasite that causes Chagas disease, which is a really serious, long-term illness that can actually lead to heart failure.
And the way it spreads is pretty straightforward and, well, alarming. You have this insect people call the kissing bug. It bites an infected armadillo and picks up the parasite.
Then that same bug bites a person. But here's the key part. It then defecates near the bite, and the parasite gets into our body through that wound.
So where does all of this leave us? I mean, we've basically seen three completely different versions of the same animal, right? The marvel, the nuisance, and the hidden threat.
It's this really wild contradiction. On one hand, you've got this ecological hero, building homes for a whole community of other animals. And on the other hand, you have a walking, armored reservoir for these ancient, debilitating diseases like leprosy and chagas.
They're not just some cute, weird, or annoying creature. They are a really complicated part of the world around us, with very real consequences. So knowing that they are both these vital engineers and also potential disease carriers, it forces you to ask a bigger question, right? How does this change the way you see the wildlife living right in your own backyard? It's definitely something to think about.